Welcome to today's Parenting Special Needs Live. Today, we're going to be talking about fostering healthy and safe relationships. We know that our children or children with disabilities are 3 times more likely to be abused than peers without disabilities. They're also more likely to be seriously injured, mistreated, and harmed. And did you also know that sometimes it's someone that they know? Oftentimes, more often than not, it's someone that they do know, whether it's another parent or a teacher or a care provider. I'm Shantae with Parenting Special Needs Live, and today we're going to be speaking with Molly Dellinger-Wray, who's going to share with us how to teach our children um, about healthy and safe relationships. So please welcome Molly.
Thank you so much, Shantae, and I'm really excited to be there. This is something I love talking about. I feel like it's very important information. I didn't start out on this path to become someone who's knowledgeable about this, and I'll never say the word expert associated with this because I feel like I'm learning all of the time. Um, I'm a special education teacher by training, then had a child with a disability. Like a lot of us kind of fall into things that we don't expect roles that we'll have. And I work at Virginia Commonwealth University at the Partnership for People with Disabilities, which is a university center for excellence in developmental disabilities. And the partnership has been really leading this effort in acknowledging that there are really high rates of abuse that occur with people with disabilities at exponentially higher rates than typically developing kids and adults. And so in 2000, they started doing trainings for special educators and social workers, law enforcement, court personnel, all of the staff and people who are involved with basically recognizing and responding to abuse. And as a parent, and a special educator, I always felt like, recognizing and responding is kind of closing the gate after the horse has gotten out of the barn. Um, what we need to do is to think about prevention. And so I was really fortunate to work with a wonderful team of people at the Partnership for People with Disabilities. And we developed a project through a series of grants from some very generous donors and foundations and disability support agencies. This project called LEAP, which is called Leadership for Empowerment and Abuse Prevention. And I learned a lot in developing that. And so I learned about things that we can do to help people learn about preventing abuse.
So, yeah, so that's what we want you to share about. So, what can families do to help and start prevention teaching or, the
One
skills?
of the first things that I learned was rather than focusing on abusive behavior, was to look at an abusive relationship, is to look at what a healthy relationship looks like.
Mm,
Um, and figure out, this is kind of one of those things, Shantae, that we were never taught as young people.
right.
Um, we also were never taught social skills. There were some things that we just learned as we went along. Many of us have learned by some really heartbreaking mistakes. And so what my philosophy is just as you can teach someone to distinguish like a quarter from a nickel, you
Mhm.
can teach someone to discriminate between what's a healthy relationship and what's an unhealthy relationship.
And how do you do that? And how do you break it down for our kids?
Well, I'm going to share my screen. One of the things that we do in the healthy relationships training that we developed called LEAP, which is Leadership for Empowerment and Abuse Prevention, is we have people think about categories for the people in their world. And I hope everyone can see the screen right now. So we have a spiral, and I'm going to just go through briefly what's in the spiral and really looking at the relationships in our life and how we feel about people, how much we trust them, what kind of touch we have with them, and what information that we share with them. So this helps people really learn about establishing some rules and some boundaries, which is just a really hard thing to do. So we start with the star because everyone is the most important person in your world. Even if your mother or your family members or your teacher or your best friend is super important to you, you are the most important person in your world. And then in this spiral around it, this blue space, we have the people who are really, really your very close friends and might be family member, might not be family members. We're really careful to say to people, you know what? You might have a family member that you don't trust and you don't feel close to, and that's okay. So the blue space is people who are very, very close to you. The green space is your friends. They may move into one of the things that I love about this is it's a spiral. So people can move in and out
Mhm.
through the spaces. Um, the green space is for your friends. And then we have a little separation here. This purple space is for people who are paid to support you. Those are staff members. And this is a really hard distinction for people. And it's really hard as a person who supported people with disabilities to say, like, I love working with you. I love my job, but we aren't friends.
Mm,
Um, and
yeah.
we may become friends. Um, but for most staff people, do you know when their birthday is? Have you been to their house? Do they spend time with you when they're not paid to spend that time? Um, and that's a really hard concept.
Right.
And it's a little bit heartbreaking because a lot of adults with disabilities are very isolated and staff people do the same jobs that friends do, but the difference is that they're paid. And so I think just to teach people that there's a separation there,
Mhm.
and it's a hard separation. We never want people to feel more isolated and lonely than they may already feel. And there are some staff who do move into this space.
Right. They're
Um,
kind of somewhat friends, but also are paid. But I think I can see how that would be difficult for my daughter to really grasp because, you know, most of them are
it's
paid,
very
but they act like they're friends. I mean, well, not like friends, but she thinks of them as friends. So,
right, because they do the same things that friends do. You talk to them, they help you out, they take you places.
right.
Um, but when their job is over, you might not ever see them again. And that's really heartbreaking.
Mm,
It's heartbreaking for people with disabilities to establish these really close attachments. And when people move on, they lose that relationship.
right.
So that's an important distinction. Acquaintances go next, and those are all of the social media people, the people that we call our friends that are not really our friends. And I really would love for people who support people with disabilities and for family members of people with disabilities to think about how the word that we use when we talk about friends. Um, there's that expression, a stranger is a friend I haven't met yet. But really, is a stranger a friend you haven't met yet? Maybe. But usually, for someone to be a friend, you have to have known them for a long time. They have to have proven themselves trustworthy or helpful to you in some way. And so, you know, we use this term, especially with young children, like pointing out a group of kids who they don't know and say, go play with your friends over there. Well, those really are not your friends. And so I think it's important to really think about how we use that term, and think like, this is an acquaintance. This is someone you know their name, but it's really not a friend. Over here we have strangers. Everyone has different rules for strangers depending on where you live and what your culture is. Here we have the heart, which is for your romantic partner. We emphasize to people that the way a romantic partner touches you can be an intimate touch. They can touch you in private places if both people consent, but it's not the way other people should be touching you unless they're a romantic partner. We also say your romantic partner has to know that they are your romantic partner. You can't wish someone were your romantic partner and put them in that space um, if they aren't aware of it. And then over here, we have another really important part, and this is the red circle.
Wait,
And
wait 1 second. I want to ask a question. I want to go back to the heart for a minute because just because we might have younger families watching us, but obviously this is for across the spectrum of ages, right? So that it's
right,
because
right.
obviously you don't want a little kid having someone
You don't want a
uh,
romantic partner if
right.
you're
You don't want a
8.
romantic. partner if if your child's 7. So, but
Right.
we are dealing with children that are also are or young adults as well. So she's talking across all the ages.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
so
you
now
for
we're going to the red dot.
that. Okay, the red circle. The red circle is outside of your world. And this is essentially saying, you know what, there may be people that you just don't want in your world right now. And that's okay. Like we all have the right to shut someone out of our world emotionally. Um, and what I say is, you don't even have to tell the person that they're in the red circle. You don't want them in your world. They have done something that loses your trust. They have done something that's hurtful on purpose. I always say, lots of people can hurt you by mistake, and that happens. But if someone's going to hurt you on purpose, that's not a healthy relationship. So the red circle people go over here. Now they can always come out of there. Usually, I always joke with young adults that people go from the romantic relationship to the red circle, and that's okay. Um, or for a lot of adults, that's how that works, and that's okay. But people, it's okay to change your mind about who you trust. That there might be somebody here that was just a really, really close family member or a really close friend, but your life has changed and you don't see that person as often and you're not as in contact with that person. And so they may move out here into the green space, or if they do something really hurtful, they can go over here in the red circle. And the red circle is just a place for people that you don't want in your world right now.
And that
And
and
so,
that it's okay to tell like a mom or somebody like, hey, we want to put those people in the red zone. I guess that's something you talk about, right? I mean, you have to
right, you
know,
can talk about it. It's not something that you have to
say,
even share with someone.
okay.
Like I'm red circle, although I did have a young woman who I loved working with, and she worked with us. One of the things about the training that we do when we do this training is that um, we have people with disabilities who are the trainers. People with intellectual disabilities train this along with a co-trainer. And one of the lovely trainers that we had very early on was just a lovely woman, and she said, I had to red circle him. She was done with him, and she said I had to red circle him. And I loved that she generalized the concept so well, and she knew exactly what that meant.
Yeah, that's great.
And so there are people, and I always say, like, you may just want to red circle somebody for a day. You just want them out of your world right now. It may be because of their behavior, or it may be because, and we all are familiar with this, that you have done something that is embarrassing
Mm.
or that you are not proud of, and you just don't want to see that person again. You just don't want to see that person again. And so you may say, you know what, I want to red circle that person because I don't want to see them. I don't want to spend time with them. I don't want to talk to them. But it's not their fault. It might be your fault. And that's okay because we all have the right to do that. And that's something that I wish I had learned way before the age that I learned it.
Yeah. So I know. Yeah, I think I like that too. And what about feelings? Like, what if
Well, it's important to pay attention to how you feel around someone. So, generally, and I think about this people in this blue space. For me, I think about the days that I've had a really bad day or the days that I've done something stupid. And I think about the people that I can reach out to and say, like, oh my gosh, I did this stupid thing. Those are the people that you call and you say, you are not going to believe this, stupid thing I did, this, you know, big mistake I made. And you know that they're not going to judge you, that they're going to say or do something that makes you feel better. Okay. We all have people like that in our lives that we can just be our true self with them and admit our shortcomings and know that they are still meeting us with love and acceptance. They may provide feedback, but that we're not afraid of what they know about us or how we look around them. It is complete and total unconditional acceptance. And so those feelings are really important because when you feel those feelings about someone, you feel safe with them. Okay. And you feel like you can trust them. Okay. If you're anxious or worried, if you feel someone's going to judge you, if you feel nervous around them, that's a really good sign that that is not a healthy relationship. And we all, might be in relationships. I think about, early stages of a romantic relationship when you're excited and anxious to see someone and you're on your best behavior because you don't know them that well. And that's different. That's a different kind of feeling. But if you feel, and I always think, think of those physical feelings, that your heart is beating faster, that your face is going to get red. Um, all of those, you might feel, a stomach queasiness, or some people feel like they're going to throw up. Everyone has their own barometer of how they feel when they feel nervous or anxious. Um, and that is an important indicator of like, hey, that relationship, that's a big red flag to me that that is not a healthy relationship.
So I want to just ask this question because as you were saying it out, I want to clarify. So I'm thinking about my own life, and if Kaylee were to come to me and she's anxious and she's feeling excited, might that also be like she has a crush on someone and she can't tell me, or because they have a
Right.
hard time
And that's
labeling their feelings?
right. And that's a wonderful kind of anxiety. That's a
So yeah,
wonder when
happier anxiety.
butterflies
She's
in the
happy.
stomach.
Go ahead. I'm
That's
sorry.
not a feeling of dread.
Okay, dread. So that's so the distinction. So she might come to me and she's chipper and excited about this, but if she comes to me and she's saying concerning things such as, you know, I can't even think of
Do
something,
we have to?
but
Do we have to see
yeah,
that person?
yeah. Can I? Well, my she perseverates on stuff, so she would probably spin it in another way. But yeah, but we pay attention to those. So if it's a crush or something, it's kind of see how they're. I'm trying to figure out how a family member would decipher because if a child comes to you or a young adult comes to you and they say kind of I feel a little, because she can't label her feelings all the times, so
And you know what? We all have trouble labeling our feelings.
yes. I
I
agree. Me too.
always like sometimes you don't even know the name of your feelings, but your feelings are so important because our feelings help us figure out who we're going to trust. So, first day of school anxiety is a lot different than trip to the doctor where you know you're going to get a shot anxiety.
So we
Um,
have to help clarify with the children like what they're feeling, whether it's a happy or a dread,
nervous, scared,
a happy or scared. Okay, all right, that's good distinction.
right?
Okay,
What's good about that, and also figuring out like how much do you trust someone. What I say to people is, you may be the kind of person, and we all know people like this that trust people as soon as they meet someone.
mhm,
Well, that's wonderful, but you know what, it's not a good idea for kids and adults to trust people right away. Um, I always say, like, I might meet someone at a party and think they're really nice and fun and like spending time in them with them, but I'm not going to tell them where I hide the key to my house.
right. Mm,
Um, and oftentimes, I think people are exploited and abused by trusting people who they meet right away, who have no credibility. And so we always say you have to earn trust over time. And how do people show you that they're trustworthy? Well, they might help you. They are people that you feel like they will not hurt you on purpose. So,
mm,
like the words friend and the word trust are two words that I feel like we need to unpack a little bit, um, because we use these words really freely,
right.
but in truth, the people that you trust have earned it in some way. And the people who are your friends, your real friends, are people who have earned it in some way.
Mm,
And so we just need to be aware of that.
yeah, and try to help them decipher. Yeah, I think that's great. To really, I think you're absolutely right. That's good for everybody.
It is good for everybody. This is
Sometimes we all
really
need to still learn that, right?
this
So
is not particular to people with disabilities.
yeah,
And so to think about those healthy relationships and how you feel when you're in those healthy relationships. And what does it feel like when you're with um, your neighbor, your friend? how does that feel when you're with that person? You feel happy, you feel relaxed. Another way of saying that happy and relaxed is to feel safe.
Say,
That you know that person isn't going to hurt you on purpose. And you know that if you needed help, that person would be there for you. And that's really important.
very important. Yeah, I think that's great. And then, so what are steps in the, you know, to start teaching our children? Like, what would you recommend each parent teach their child, like the next steps?
I think one of the most important things is to figure out someone that you can trust, that you can talk to, so that if something happens and there is an unhealthy relationship in your life, there is someone that you can talk to about it. Someone who's not going to judge you, someone who is going to be there to listen. And if everybody had just one person that they knew they could go to talk about a relationship that doesn't feel quite right to them, that would be a huge step in getting help. We do know that people with disabilities, kids and adults, experience high rates of abuse and neglect and exploitation and sexual assault. That is a statistical fact. However, it does not have to be an act that defines them. And we're going to talk next time about healthy touch and ways to foster um, healthy touch and have kids recognize what's a healthy touch and what's an unhealthy touch. Um,
Oh, that was
but
good. Well,
that's going to be fun.
that'll be
That is
interesting.
that
That's
is going
next time, right?
to. But to have someone, and you think about if you have an interaction with someone and it just seems odd, there's a really good chance that you're going to talk to a neighbor, a friend, a
Right.
family member, and say, you know what, this just happened. Does this seem weird to you?
Mm,
Um, and I think if we teach kids that that's an important step to take,
right.
if something doesn't feel okay to them, that's really important. That
Yeah.
they're not in this on their own.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking, geez, have I done that enough with Kaylee? Like, I don't know that I've really said, like, if you're, I don't know, I'm gonna have to see how I'll have to address that more. Like, hey, if you're uncomfortable about something, come and you're welcome to come and share with me.
And a lot of things we do naturally. I mean, a lot of parents do this naturally. When you're spending time or their child's in a new situation, you say, hey, how did it go?
Mm,
What did you like about what did you like about this? Is
right.
this something you want to do again or not do again? I think a lot of us just do that naturally.
Mhm.
Um, and if a child says like, it was okay, or, it was great. I can't wait to have this person again. I can't wait to do this again. That's a totally different message. So, and you know how to read Kaylee's signs.
Yeah.
Um,
So what
you
if
have a
I so all right, I want to just go back to this. I'm having the person, the friend or someone that they go to, teaching them that, right? Like that's also the, like selecting that person in advance so that, let's say they were going to summer camp, you know, um,
right. So any
like
kind
what
of
if they're going to a new
pre-plan.
situation or something and kind of planning it out a little bit to say, hey, what do you have any advice on that?
Absolutely. For every new experience that our kids are involved in, we have to plan a little bit. And not a lot, not like a big formal thing, but for most families, at least for me, putting my kids in a new situation cold just was never going to work. And every time I did it, I think, why did I think this was going to work? This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Um, Other families might be able to do this, not my family. So to do a little prep work and say, okay, if something happens while you're at this person's house, or if they, you talk about like, okay, I had one child, not my child with a disability, my other child was an extremely picky eater. And so we always had to say, like, what's going to happen if you go there and all you eat is goldfish crackers? So what if they don't have goldfish crackers? Like, how are you going to navigate that? And it's also a good idea to say, like, if you want to get out of there and you want to come home, What is something that you can do? How are we going to get that? If there's something that makes you uncomfortable and you want to leave, what's our strategy for figuring that out?
Mm. So what?
So, and I shared, and it's ironic because I have not ironed anything in my house for probably, I can't even remember, since before I had children for some reason. Um, but my kids' code word when they were at a friend's house was always to say, "I left the iron on." So they'd call
Now
me.
people are gonna know.
We'd be in the car. Well, they're older now, so the secret's out. But they would call me, or they would say, like when we were in the car on the way someplace, "Mom, I think I left the iron," and that was their way of saying, like, can you get me out of this situation? This
Got
is I
All
don't.
right, so I think those are really great tips. So I want to just repeat them in case. So one, kind of have a person that is your go-to person if you're feeling uncomfortable, that you can share with, someone that you feel confident with or trust, right? That could be a parent or it could be somebody else. You guys can, I guess, a family could talk about that in advance.
Right, right. And as kids get older, even though they share everything with their parents, when they get older, they might want to say, like, I just don't want to share everything like that with my parents.
Right.
I don't want to have that conversation with my mom or my dad. And
Right.
that's okay. But then figuring out, well, who do you? Is there a neighbor? Is there a
Right.
friend? Is there an aunt or uncle, family member that you have that relationship with? That's okay.
Right. And so talking about that, I think that's a big step, is starting that conversation. And then also letting them know that you can develop a code word that they can share with, something to kind of, if they're not comfortable, right?
Right. If they're not comfortable and they want to get out of a situation, having a plan for that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. All right. So just repeat again what next week is going to, next issue is going to be, our next conversation is going to be about touching.
Healthy touch.
Oh
We're
boy.
going to talk about healthy touch, and how to ask permission and how to ask someone to ask your permission before they touch.
Oh, I like that. All right. Well, I can't thank you enough, Molly, for sharing with us. I think there's some valuable lessons and strategies in here that, at least we can all begin the conversation with our children about these healthy relationships, and ways to start prevention, because it is about talking about it.
Right. And I love talking about this. I'm happy and looking forward to talking again.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.